Hey, what's up? It's Bon. Let's talk about Mass Effect. If you like Mass Effect, if you like gaming, channels and videos and discussion and podcasts, videos like this one, or even streams, please subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, smack that like button. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Today, I am going to do something that is mostly out of desperation. I really want to talk about the next Mass Effect, but we don't have much to talk about unless I just make stuff up. Looking at you, other creators who are totally just lying and making stuff up. Well, we're not going to do that here. Instead, we are going to look back at N7 Day 2022. Now, this isn't going to have any huge revelations. I do have a couple things I noticed in preparing for this video that I don't remember noticing back when I covered N7 Day 2022 originally. So we're going to go over it. We're going to look at the blog. We're going to look at everything else. And I am going to, we'll go from there. So, well, to start off here was the blog. Fairly innocuous. Nothing was super crazy here. Honestly, I remember when this dropped being like, oh man, it's just going to be merch, because that's all we saw here at the beginning. And then we got to the bottom, and I still remember this being like, oh, that's new, but it's just a picture. Like, okay, that's fine. And then I remember seeing this download video, and that's where things kicked off, right? That's where everyone got excited. We will look at that. I think it was fun because it was layered, right? The initial impression was okay, like this was fine, but let's get to let's get to the real stuff. And then we dove into it, right? So I'm going to look more closely at this and a screenshot that I have that dials in on it in a minute. So first, let's look here. So this was a big deal for a game as early in production as this one seems to be, listing off all of these directors. Big deal. Obviously, we have Mike Gamble, the project director, who's the teaser in chief. I'm actually surprised we haven't heard really anything from him in quite a while. We have Danielle Enns, who I believe has been with BioWare for quite a while, but this was an interesting one at the time because she is the last director position they had open. And this one was open for quite a while. So the development director position was posted on their career website for quite a long time, and then it got filled. And since then, we don't know of anyone who has left. We have Mary DeMarley, who everyone's very excited for to be the narrative director. At least I know I am. And we have Parrish Lay. Parrish Lay was, I believe, one of the cinematic directors, at least on Mass Effect 2 and 3, maybe on the first one as well, but as an OG, has been around forever. And having someone like them, even if they're in the franchise creative director, I don't really know what that means. It's exciting to have an OG, because I really think an exciting part about this next game will be the mix of OG developers and then young devs who are going to be working on this game who like grew up on Mass Effect. And I really think that's an exciting portion of this. We go down through here. We are going to look at this. This is one of the things I've never talked about. That comes later in the video. Here we have some sim stuff. We'll talk about this again. This was something that not many people picked up on, and even since then, not many people have. I feel like I'm about the only person who really covered this, at least initially. I think others made videos later. These were just a bunch of merch links. We won't talk too much about that. I will show this off a little bit, and then we had the big mother load here. So we'll go to my channel here, and I will enable sounds, and we will listen to this. That was obviously really cool, and people just knew there had to be more to it. So it only took, I think, 2 hours for someone to dive into that file and realize that there was audio hidden behind it, which I am going to pull up here. So here was the official. They did release the translation, or the secret audio in full, and here we will listen to it.
I can see it. How did we miss this? Exactly. The Council will be furious. Although they should know by now not to underestimate human defiance. Perhaps was the most endearing fate.
Now, that was exciting for people. I believe, just to me, the idea that we knew that Liara was coming back in some capacity from the 2020 trailer, from this the Game Awards. The voice actress for Liara had confirmed it as well, but this was really cool because this meant that her voice actress went into a studio and recorded this little blip. Obviously, we're a long ways away from the actual game coming out, but I think I know for me, and probably for a lot of others, just hearing her voice again and knowing who she's talking as was really cool. Now, a really controversial thing about this thing was who she was talking to. It seems like the default thing most people have gone to is that that's a Geth. I don't think so. I still don't, because for a few reasons. I think the 2021 poster is hinting to us that the destroy ending is canon in this next game, and that all of the Geth are dead, but that they will be involved again later. The second reason is that when the Geth would speak to humans, in the few instances they do in the trilogy, they don't speak in their own language. They speak in the translated language that's universal. So it makes no sense for her to be talking to a robot, because she wouldn't even be able to understand it if it's using that language. And the third thing is that we hear the Shadow Broker speak to their agent in these encrypted ways earlier in Mass Effect 2 and I believe 3. I believe the actual Shadow Broker, the old one, the Yogg, does that, and I believe we also hear these kind of muffled voices in Mass Effect 3. So I still don't think she's speaking to a Geth. A lot of other people do, but I do believe the Geth are going to be involved, and that's a whole different video. This was kind of cool that Michael Gamble, who I mentioned in the blog, did say here, although they should know by now not to underestimate human defiance. Liara T'Soni, Dr. Shadow Broker, and something. Now, what people initially took this as was like, oh, this is who she's talking to. But no, Gamble is listing Liara's titles, and we know she's the doctor. She's a paleontologist, or whatever her actual name was. She is the Shadow Broker, and she's apparently something else. So is she going to be the leader of the Asari? Is she going to be the leader of some resistance or some other faction that isn't friendly? We do have some indication from this trailer that there's discussion that maybe she this isn't us listening in on a conversation she's having involving us, but maybe she's being listened to by someone. And we have a lot to discuss about that here. So this is the still image of that very slightly moving image we saw from the video. There's a bunch of things to hit here, at least in my opinion. The most obvious one being this giant, what we assume is a mass relay or some kind of relay. The biggest thing here is seeing this big MR7. A lot of people have taken this to be Mass Relay 7, but in the older art that looks like this from the 25th anniversary art book, Mike Gamble kind of denied that that's the thing because it was proposed by Shinobi, who's a big Mass Effect fan, but it's not completely clear. My theory on this is it's actually Mobile Relay 7. I think this was a Cerberus project that probably got ended when Cerberus was destroyed in Mass Effect 3. I believe other forces in the Reaper War, after the Reaper War have come upon this and are using it or trying to complete it, and it's going to be a big part of the next game, because a mobile relay, even if it's not as powerful as an actual relay, would be a really big deal, especially if this game takes place in a time where the relays are still not fully rebuilt. Now, some other things to take notice of. I just did a video on this. We see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We see lights under 1, 2, and 3. We see a big extender under 4, and then nothing under 5, 6, 7. There are people who have proposed or speculated that this may be indicating the trilogy, the spin-off, or the extended universe here of Andromeda, and then potential for 3 more games. I think it's interesting. Who knows for real, but we will figure it out. We also have this down here, which is interesting. You can't see it fully on the file here, but we have where it says vacuum relay construction record, monitoring station operated by Green Dagger Limited, property of Deep Space Dihao SAV, ship captain Sub Narvark Show Rai Zillion Jones. So what people have taken this stuff all to mean is that this is a vacuum dock relay. And so I'm assuming that's what they're calling this mass relay. It's under construction. The thought is that this may be a Alliance vessel, and that this isn't what we're looking at. This is the subject that we're looking at, but here is the ship we're on, and that this may actually be surveillance footage or some kind of Alliance potentially keeping an eye on what is going on here. We see this really interesting name that appears to be a Quarian name that also has a human last name involved. So we don't know if this is maybe a Quarian and human, someone who has joined, who is married in a traditional, more human way to combine names. So we don't know that quite yet, but it is interesting. An interesting thing down here is we see this date here. So people very quickly picked up on the American style date of 11/7, which is N7 day. But people also picked up on this 90 right here. And the reason that's interesting is because that would, in theory, be maybe hinting to the year, I believe it was 2190, which is only a few years after the events of Mass Effect 3. And people, including myself, believe that maybe that was a hint for when the next game may take place. We'll see. Heading on some other stuff here, I definitely found this interesting, that these ships here and this one here, and there's another one here, definitely don't look like any of the ships we see in the trilogy, or even for the most part in Andromeda. We'll get back to that. But these ships do. These ships look like very standard fare for the Mass Effect trilogy and look very of the time of the trilogy. These ones are interesting because they appear to be much, much, much smaller, but to use the style of the initiative ships that went to Andromeda, including all the arcs that have kind of the cylindrical ship with these 4 arms in the back. There's been some theorizing I've seen from people who think that this might have something to do with the type of drive that the Nexus and all of the arcs used, that actually moves them faster than FTL. And they designed it to be able to get to Andromeda faster than they would have, even though it took 600 years. It would have taken longer without this tech. That potentially that tech could have been used as the relays were being rebuilt to get across the Milky Way faster as they were waiting for that to get repaired. We'll see. I think this is definitely interesting in some capacity. The last thing I'll point out here is, you may have already seen it, but below me here is what I think looks like a reflection, like what we see at the beginning of Mass Effect 1. You see a white stripe, a red stripe, and a white stripe. I believe there's been multiple hints to Shepard returning to this next game. This is yet another one. I again believe this is us looking at a screen of surveillance footage and us listening to Liara surveilling her. I think this is a very clear, and I hope you can see it on your screen, a very clear, like, hey, there is a N7 looking at this screen. And at this point, I think if they're referencing N7s with Mass Effect, they better be referencing Shepard, because if they dipsy-do people and they kind of make people think Shepard's returning, especially in that 2020 trailer, they will cause themselves problems they didn't have to do. So we will see about that. There is something worth looking at here where you can tell this is obviously similar art. It's this the N7 Day 2022 has been updated quite a bit. If you look here, these ships look much more like futuristic and different. It appears that we are over some solid planet, or maybe like a huge space station. We don't have the lights under 1, 2, and 3. This again is from the 25th anniversary art book. We do have the MR7. We do have the partially completed vacuum relay or mobile relay or mass relay, whatever this is called. But I think it's definitely interesting to look at that. Another thing I've seen people point out is how the coloring of this, where it's blue at the top and then brown and it gets darker as you go down, actually resembles the color scheme of the 2021 poster that has like the Geth shape or Geth reference. Just some food for thought. Then we get here. This is from the blog up at the very top. This is the full version of it. And there's definitely some interesting things to notice here. I notice sky cars that look exactly like the trilogy. There's some people who have been saying that they think the next game is set hundreds of years after the events of the trilogy. I think that we have so much technology that looks very trilogy era, kind of pushes back against that. I would think that all of these things would look much different, even just in concept art, than they do if this was meant to be some hyper futuristic thing. We have something that is really interesting here, where this symbol here, I believe this one here, and there may be a few others, are symbols that we've only ever seen before in Andromeda. I don't know how to explain that, because I'm someone who thinks this next game takes place in the Milky Way. My only real explanation is that the initiative would have had sponsors, more than likely, would have been funded by whoever the mysterious benefactor was. It very well could have been in cahoots with many of the large corporations of the galaxy, and they very well may have sent along their own products and even their branding to Andromeda, and maybe that's why we see this in both places. I don't know. Maybe this is on Andromeda. I don't think it is, but maybe. There's also a few more details that are kind of interesting in here, where if you look behind this A and D, you see this big dome-like feature. This is the same kind of thing you see if you look over the edge of the buildings and the location at Ilium in Mass Effect 2. You see these big domes in the distance. So all of this really looks a lot like Ilium. I don't know if it is Ilium or not, but the architecture is extremely similar. This is also hinted down here by this Asari on what I assume is an advertisement. We also have the Omega symbol here that we see on Arya's Omega station, which I think is interesting. Maybe she is expanding her business. But I really think these domes are interesting. They make me think this could be Ilium, but I'm not positive of it. We see this one here, and I believe we may see another one, but I can't see it right now. So just some food for thought. This is a cool piece of art no matter what it is, but I think it tells us a lot more than what we may think. This is art that was posted by Mike Gamble specifically. There's some interesting details here. Over here, we see the solar sign, which is exactly the same as the one that we see on Omega in the markets. There's I think it's Solar Electronics. We see three figures here. We see a Solarian, we see a Krogan, and we see a Turian, but they all have masks on, and you can see it from these breathing tubes. You can see the mask actually on the Turian. You see the tube coming off of the Krogan there, so they're wearing a mask, and then you see the Solarian with their tubes coming off their mask there. Again, we see very trilogy era sky cars flying around. Again, I think that's dating this near to the trilogy timeline, if not maybe a bit far, maybe a bit off of it, but not too much, which goes back to that 90 date and potentially hinting that this next game takes place just a few years after 3. I couldn't tell you where this world is. You know, you see the sign over here, you think that maybe, you probably can't see it because it's blocked off the screen. Well, that's over here, I promise, on the right side. This could be Omega. Maybe these are the Ezo mines that have been rebuilt after Arya got the station back. This could be Palaven for all we know. I don't know. This could be a brand new planet that we've never heard of before. This one just looks really cool. I think whatever these things are, they're very stunning, and it would be cool to see them represented in the game. We also have this here. This was part of, it's just this little tiny thing right here. Before the merchandise websites, we had this art. And what I found really interesting about it is this right here on the right side. I've made videos about this. I've talked about this before, but that is a planet or a moon potentially, and this is the Citadel. Now, some people have commented on how there's no lights or anything on this. This seems like some pretty basic concept art, but what I think is the most interesting about this is that if you remember, the Citadel was initially in a nebula where only the nebula existed and there were no planets. It's very specifically stated in the codex that there's no planets in that system. And so we see an orbital body here. Well, if we think back to Mass Effect 3, no matter how you end the game, the Citadel is in Earth's orbit. What this looks a lot like to me is the moon. And so what I think this is one of the first pictures or pieces of art we've seen of the Citadel back together in one piece and likely orbiting Earth. Now, is Earth in the background here, and is the tractor beam connected again? We don't know. We don't see the Presidium here. Again, it's fairly basic art. Maybe it wouldn't be there on purpose. I don't know. But I still think this is very interesting art. We have a ship down here. Is it the SR2? I have no idea. It probably isn't, but we have no way of knowing. I just think this is really interesting art. I think it's really cool looking, just in general, from an aesthetic point of view. But I think that planet right there, that body, is extremely interesting because I think this absolutely puts this art with the Citadel in the Sol system orbiting Earth, and that is very exciting. The last bit I have here is another piece of art that didn't really get much attention even from me. This is the first time I've actually talked about it. And I think it's only interesting really for one reason, because I believe everything else we've seen here besides this is all next game related. And so we have this in the same blog. This is the SR2 and its Mass Effect 3 configuration with the coloring and stuff. I don't know if there's any bits and bobs that are different, but I have no idea when this takes place, like when this is supposed to be happening. Maybe it's in the middle of the Reaper War, retaking Earth. I have no idea. We do have another Alliance ship down here, which you can tell by the back of the ship there. We have another ship here that kind of looks like another Alliance ship. I don't know. But there's something happening here, and it's devastating. There's fireballs everywhere. But I believe, because everything else in this blog appeared to be with the next game, when it came to all the concept art, I believe this is concept art for the next game that involves the SR2. I believe that if the SR2 is still involved in the Alliance, it's not retired or something, this must be very shortly after the events of Mass Effect 3. This probably isn't 50, 100 years later, or else this ship probably wouldn't be in commission anymore. And I think this was a more significant thing than we realize. I don't have much to take from it. I don't think there's many clues or anything here, but I do think it's really interesting. It's obviously, back from wherever it crashed at the end of Mass Effect 3. It's with other Alliance ships. And I firmly believe that this is art that's meant for the next game, for the SR2. You can take from that whatever you wish. So that's my kind of basic recap of everything from then, including some things I've thought of since in 7-Day 2022. And I probably missed stuff again, and that's fine. But I wanted to go back to this, even just for my own selfish reasons. I will probably do another recap of this around October to rehash everything before the next N7 day. If we get more info this summer, which I think we could, maybe get some in June if they do like an EA Play, or if EA partners up or BioWare partners up with Jeff Keighley for Summer Game Fest. Who knows? They could even partner with Sony or Xbox and show stuff at their shows. Who knows? I certainly don't, but I do hope we get something. I think this will be the year of Dreadwolf. I think this summer we're going to get a Dreadwolf release date. They're going to start their marketing campaign. So I understand that we probably won't get a ton of Mass Effect info, maybe until N7 Day, if then. But I really believe that we'll get something to tide us over before that. We are due. I'm filming this in April. It's been 2 months since their last blog that was about Dreadwolf. They release a BioWare blog about every 2 months. I wouldn't be surprised if we get something in April, and then it will be June, which I expect we'll get something then, and then we'll go on through the rest of the year. And obviously we'll have something to talk about in November. But that's what I have for this one. If there's anything I missed, if there's anything you agree with or disagree with, please let me know down in the comments. I'm happy to hear any and all theories, but I may disagree with you, and that's okay for both of us. If you like the video, please like this one. This is a longer one. I know not everyone's going to watch it, but I enjoy doing the 5-minute videos and the 30-minute ones. So please let me know that you like it by subscribing to the channel, liking the video. If you want more Mass Effect stuff, if you want more gaming stuff, streams, podcasts, all of that, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. We're getting closer and closer to getting that partnership on YouTube. And so every view, every sub, everything helps. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Catch me on all the socials as Bond Diesel, including on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, about everywhere else you can look. You can also find my weekly podcast, The Echo Cast, on all podcast providers and this YouTube channel. That's all I have for this one. Until next time.